Our next guest is the final speaker for tonight, which is kind of sad because this is so much fun. As I introduce you to Erica Grohol, a landscape designer at Wendel Companies. Erica brings a thoughtful approach to shaping outdoor environments that connect people and place and ecology. Her work spans from early concept design through implementation, always with a focus on community and long-term stewardship. Please welcome Erica as she comes up.
Thank you so much. So good evening, everyone. I am in the field of landscape architecture. So the story that I'm going to close out with tonight is about spaces in between buildings, and specifically one of my favorite projects I think I've worked on in the city, a courtyard project at BPS 99 here in Buffalo. So oftentimes landscape architects, they're trained to define space, to create spaces, to build spaces, but more often than not, we're also looking at, as landscape designers, working within spaces that are residual or spaces between buildings and focusing on, sometimes well after the fact, how to make those spaces most usable for whatever's happening at that time. And so it's an area of landscape design that I've always been fascinated by, to look at sort of spaces that otherwise may not be the focus of our day-to-day experience. But they're oftentimes some of the most interesting ones, and they have sometimes the most interesting identities. So this project that I'm going to talk about today is one of those that I think we really were able to bring to life. To kind of use an example, I think alleyways are one of those places that oftentimes falls outside of maybe the traditional management or ownership defined areas, so that people kind of can take on those spaces and bring a sense of stewardship or ownership to them that creates some really interesting projects. And sometimes those are spontaneous. So at BPS 99, they have really amazing courtyard spaces already. It's I think, fantastic design for a school. It brings in light and air and opportunities to do all kinds of activities. The project that we are focused on for this presentation is one of those courtyard spaces, the only one that wasn't programmed at the time. So the first thing we did was we went and looked at what spaces they have already. Almost all of them were recreationally programmed, so they had a lot of playground spaces, a lot of play surfacing, rubberized play surfacing. But yeah, these are great spaces for the students to go and recreate. This is the space that we worked on. So this is what it looked like when we first started the project back in spring of 2024. Pretty much a blank slate, but I think every site has a lot of stories to tell you and has a lot of different needs at that moment in time. So the context was really important. This school has a lot of view sheds into this space. So there's a community room, there's a multi-purpose room, there's classrooms and a hallway, and the view that's giving the space is also a big part of the design. So, we don't want to necessarily distract the students all day, but we also want to make sure that that's an engaging space. And so we did some really interesting things. I love courtyard spaces because we can model them out really pretty easily. Study the shade patterns, which for plantings is really important. And so we have some diagramming here that shows the things that we just started looking at, that are pretty much just sort of like the impacts on the site. But a big part of this, we worked with Play Studio. They focus on very active engagement. And what we were able to do is get the school staff together and a lot of the stakeholders to actually go out into the space and visualize what they might want to be doing out there. So not so much just kind of sitting and sort of thinking about it, but actually picturing what they could be doing out there, which was great. I won't go through the list, but there are a lot of existing gaps that were identified. We think like the circulation patterns are usually one that's key. We're making sure that we can make these spaces more accessible to all students and staff. And so this kind of just shows you how many layers were involved. But the program areas, we packed a lot into this space, but so there's a delicate balance. Do you want to over-program something where people can't reinvent how it's used? But in this case, we wanted to really give the students an opportunity to bring what they're learning in the classroom outdoors. And so there's a lot going into that space. One of the things is a shed, which now, after tonight's presentation, I was very excited about. There is a place for one. This was really an interesting project, too, because courtyard space when you think about construction, you're like, okay, we got to get everything in there. So it was a good thing it was an elementary school, everything's small already. So constructing in this site was really interesting. A lot of the furniture was modular, so it was built actually in the courtyard space or in the classroom or community room next door. But the construction process was really great, and there was a crane too from the parking lot for a few phases. But it was able to really be, pieced together bit by bit, and we just were able to have the ribbon cutting. So Kaylee and I are in this photo enjoying the ribbon cutting. So this was 2025, and so to see the students in the space is just such a rewarding feeling. Again, this is one of, I think, my favorite projects I've worked on, just because it was so much fun to just sort of like listen to what everyone wanted to be able to do there, and try to bring things down to their level so that they really had ownership over how they were using the space and really could be creative. And it was a nice balance. So we had plants that were more for, growing natively and letting them see all the seasons, and they didn't have to be hyper manicured. And that's kind of balanced with the spaces that they really can plant things on their own and learn more about how plants grow. So it was a great project, and we were able to get some pretty nice photos too. Again, courtyard projects are great because you can get the nice drone imaging and everything. But the scale of it was really small, but I think it was, a project where we showed that a lot's possible in those spaces in between. And I just hope that there's more opportunities throughout Buffalo to look at courtyard spaces. It's such a, I think, amazing asset to have in this city. So that's the full presentation, but that's the courtyard project at BPS 99. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Erica.